Welcome to Demming Chronicles Season 2. We chat with persons who have taken chances with ideas that are different. These are ideas that can change our society. On today's program, we welcome Warren Soloman.
Thanks for having me, Denise.
And we welcome Ayrid Chandler.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us, Ayrid and Warren. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back, Demming Chronicles Season 2, and today we chat with Warren Soloman. Warren is the Director of Tourism in the Department of Tourism in Montserrat. Warren, welcome to the show, and tell me, how is Montserrat?
Hi, Denise. Thanks again for having me. Montserrat is good. I think if you were to compare it to the rest of the Caribbean, the rest of the world, we've been having a decent run through the craziness, but we've been able to keep our heads above water, and hopefully that would continue.
Lovely, lovely. You're involved in tourism, and I think the region will be challenged in terms of tourism. I want you to just think 5 years into the future, and what would you like to see the tourism sector look like?
The tourism sector in Montserrat or the region?
You have the opportunity to do both.
Right. Well, Montserrat, as you may know, it's a British overseas territory, very, very small in geography and in population. After the volcanic eruptions in 1995 and 97, we would have lost almost 2/3 of the population. So we are down now to about 5,000, natural residents on the island here. Because of that, it's always a challenge for us to do huge things. But there are some huge things that would certainly be to the benefit of the destination. And 5 years from now, I would like to see, a better access system to the destination. So over the last few years, we've had a ferry service, an air service. Now the ferry service has been an unfortunate casualty of the pandemic. I try not to say the word. We're down to the airlift, which is fine. But considering the fact that the aircraft that service the destination just 9 seats, it means that to bring any large group of people or large groups of people, it will take a long time to do so. We have our international hub is Antigua, so we don't have an international airport. But it means that, should anything happen with Antigua, there is that knock-on effect that we will experience here in Montserrat. So right now, the government is trying to attract airlift from, different destinations, different regional destinations, but with larger aircraft. We can take up to a 19-seater aircraft, so double what we have now, and potentially 1 or 2 carriers from different gateways. So that then could open up the door for us. And 5 years is not too far down the road, and that is something that would certainly provide a tremendous boost to us. Right now, you have to know about Montserrat, a bit to plan a proper trip to the island. So we are not in all of the airline GDS reservation systems like Expedia and so on. So it takes a little work, but once you get here, it's all worth it. but
Yeah.
it could certainly be a lot easier going forward. And that's just one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, but Warren, let's just talk a little about that, because from my understanding and my experience, getting to destinations in the region is a problem. So do you have any thoughts you'd want to share on how that will impact the tourism sector for the region?
Yeah, when this whole pandemic started, I think we took about 2 months, before we to catch our breath, clutch the pearls and whatnot, and then different bodies in the region started talking. So you had the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, the OECS. Montserrat is part of OECS. And CARICOM as well. And I remember one tourism leader commenting in a Zoom meeting that we had that this was the first time in his very, very long career that he had seen both the public and private sector coming together to try to find solutions to what we were, I guess we could now say, what we were about to experience, right? Because at that time we hadn't really started experiencing it as yet. And Montserrat's position in those discussions was, let us try to build regional tourism. Let's take the advantage to try to build regional tourism, simply because we are all close by. We all control the assets, so the accommodation, the air, in the main, right? Because there's a lot of money left on the table every year by Caribbean destinations, just simply focusing on North America and Europe, which are the main gateways for us, or the main source markets for us. And so we found ourselves in a position where, travel is banned internationally, it's banned regionally. But, at that time when we just started talking about having a travel bubble, Montserrat's position was, let's start off with having a travel bubble for the Caribbean, right? So we see about ourselves. We don't have to do, too much of a hard sell. We are familiar with some of the customs, some of the cultures. We're familiar with some of the foods. So there's no huge amount of assimilation that would have to take place, all right? But it would still allow you to, get away from your scenario, wherever you may be in the region, and visit, one of the neighbors. So it was spoken about for a little bit, and then you saw North America, Europe a little bit starting to talk about, okay, well, we're going to open borders and we're going to look at these places and so on. I think it was June or July last year. You had Antigua, St. Lucia, Jamaica opening their borders. All right, so within that 4-week period, and it was open really to the international markets. So we're very comfortable going after North America and Europe, and I think we sell ourselves short by not looking at the regional market, and you can see that just in how access to the other islands is addressed. You look at the airlines. I'm an old BW boy, so I would never try to drag BW Cal, through the mud or anything. But look at the airfares. The airfares to get from anywhere in the region to another part of the region, astronomical. And I should say it's not just Cal. You had the same issues with Liat, and then there are a host of other airlines, small commuter carriers, commuter airlines up in the Northern Caribbean. There are the links, but it's still an expensive proposition, to fly between the islands. I mean, on any given day, I can according to where I am on Montserrat, I can see St. Kitts, Nevis, Antigua, or Guadeloupe. And apart from Antigua, there's no direct service to the other islands from here. So for me to get to St. Kitts, which is, I mean, it's so close, it's unbelievable. I have to go to Antigua, spend how many hours in the airport in Antigua, and then go over to St. Kitts. And then, of course, pay, something that should cost a couple $100, you're talking about what I would call a big people vacation. It's really a turn-off, I think, for the Caribbean consumer to fly within the region.
So, Warren, what you're saying is that for the foreseeable future, unless the cost of travel changes, we will continue to not have access to our own islands as Caribbean people.
I think so, unfortunately. There's a lot of lip service that's paid to this topic. I've spent years, on the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and this is always an agenda item for every meeting, and it is the way it is. I don't know if we will come out of this situation with a different mindset, but I think we should.
You've described it as a mindset as opposed to that's the economic cost. Is it that you're thinking that it's really an attitudinal issue as opposed to an economic issue?
Well, again, having that little bit of an airline background, I know the cost of travel is not easy. It's not small to operate a flight from point A to point B. But there must be ways of making it accessible. To look at popular routes. You talk to the customers, find out what the popular routes might be, and then try to make it easy. So when, for example, I think it was Liat, when Liat sort of started to revisit intra-Caribbean travel and how they offered it to the consumer. There were a lot of what they call in the industry hub and spoke. So you fly to this point, you wait for a couple hours, and then you get another flight, and you go to another. But you're still not getting to your final destination yet. So sometimes it's taking you 8, 9, 10 hours to get to somewhere that's less than an hour away. So it's. And for me, if you're just looking at the economic side, then I interpret that as a mindset.
Okay.
I don't want to make it. I don't want to make it easy for the consumer. I'll try to make it economical. I want to cover my costs, but if the consumer wants to get from here to there, then he'll have to go all here to get back to here. I don't know. There have been so many studies by so many bright people in the region. I know the last few studies were done by the CDB, Caribbean Development Bank. So the data is there, the information is there. I think people just need to get around the table and try to, bring it into their strategies.
So Warren, if you were in a position of power, what action would you take to just change the way the tourism product unfolds in the region?
The tourism product unfolding. Interesting question. I think that most of the Caribbean destinations right now are really taking a good, close, and hard look at sustainable development. And that needs to continue. We find ourselves, and I hope I don't put my foot in my mouth, but we find ourselves in a situation now where I think the Caribbean has the upper hand over, the upper hand in the cruise sector.
Yeah.
All right. Um, you know, cruise has its benefits, yes, but you know, I would challenge you to stand up in the I'm forgetting the name of the key at the port in Antigua. You know, when there are these 6 behemoths in the harbor, and just try to imagine the impact that could have on that local small community. All right, and there are a few other destinations that attract that type of cruise business. You know, the cruise lines have for a long time been able to sort of dictate the pace. You know, okay, you do this, otherwise this might happen. You know, or you might have a challenge in attracting new cruises to the destination, that sort of thing. And I think now there's a real opportunity for the region to sort of sit back and say, okay, this is what we want. This is how we're going to run the cruise industry going forward. And you know, if you want to flex your muscles and pull your ships from what is still the world's favorite cruise destination, i.e., the Caribbean, then fine. But you know, I think going forward, that's one of the areas that the region can sort of stand up and be counted. You know, for the last 20-something years, you would have had destinations paying airlines to fly to the country. All right, you know, that I know that happens. I know that happens where you are. I was a part of that in the past. You know, but you know, ask yourself the question. I'm just looking at Trinidad and Tobago. Ask yourself the question: why doesn't Trinidad pay airlines to fly to Trinidad, but Tobago has to? All right. Yeah. If it's a good deal, for your customers, then you know we'll work together. We'll market the service, but don't try to hold me to ransom if you know some of the marketing things don't work and we don't get the aircraft full all the time. You know, always that's always a little issue that I had, but really had to I guess live with. You know, we don't have that issue here because you know we just have the 2 small airlines. We don't have the international carriers coming in. Okay. Although there is a level of subsidy to you know to make it more viable, particularly in these times. But you know, back to your original question, what could we do? I think you know there's an opportunity now for folks to just sort of sit back and realize, you know, who has more bargaining power at this point in time, and you know use it to our advantage.
Thank you very much, Warren. And on that note, the issue of looking at the cruise industry and how that could impact the region, the fact that you have described our region as one of the most preferred destinations in the world for the tourism sector. We bring this interview to a wrap. But just before we go, what would be your parting comments?
Well, I think certainly one of the things coming out of the life and the pandemic, bringing it back to Montserrat scenario now, we have had, I started off by saying that, you know, we're a small destination, small population, very tiny budget, right? Because of all of the other issues. So it would always have been difficult for us to be in the same space as some of our regional colleagues. You know, you're looking at the old ways of doing the trade shows and the like. So we missed out on a lot of stuff over the years, and I have to say, over the last 2 years, we've had opportunities made available to us that we could afford, simply because things have gone virtual now. And so one of the things, the big things I'm really grappling with is, you know, are some of these activities going to revert to in person, or if they're going to be doing a hybrid, or you know. But we've had some pretty decent opportunities, and I think a lot of other, particularly the smaller destinations, that would have had challenges in being able to be noticed. We've all been able to take advantage of some of these technology-based opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Warren Soloman, Director of Tourism in Montserrat. Thank you very much for being part of Demming Chronicles. We'll be back with you shortly.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Demming Chronicles. And on this segment of the program, we interview Ayrid Chandler. Ayrid, I know you as a designer. What made you become a designer?
That is an excellent question. I don't have an actual answer for you because the journey to design was a little bit unorthodox, I guess. I was actually extremely religious when I was younger. I was a staunch Catholic, and while all of us were getting ready for CXC, they were like, pray about what you want to do and do some introspection and all of those things. And that was actually what I did. And design was one of those things that popped up. And so as a result of that, I looked into it. that's the true story. But
your mother would be very happy that my daughter prayed and design popped up.
They were not very happy at the time, actually. But my dad is in advertising, so I grew up around design. I grew up on Saturdays, instead of watching TV, watching commercials and critiquing them. So you can say that I've always kind of been involved in it. But it wasn't, well, I'm this, so you have to do this too. It didn't follow that. In Form 5, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I had no interest in anything. I didn't even do art past Form 3. So it really wasn't, it was more of everybody just telling me, what is it that you already do? And I used to organize all of the events for school. I would design the programs for the masses. I designed the invitations for Form 5 graduation and stuff like that. I was always taking pictures. And so photography and graphic design were kind of the things that I was just naturally always doing. So that's how I started. And luckily, my parents, I'm an only child, unfortunately. But fortunately, in the sense that my parents were like, okay, we'll send you to college. And I got the opportunity to go to Savannah College of Art and Design, where I did my BFA in graphic design for 4 years. So that's kind of how I started. Yeah.
How important is design, the whole concept of designing for a country? So nationally, how important is design?
Extremely important. I would say that design is one of, if not the most important industry in the world. And the reason that I say that is because people don't realize how much design impacts and touches everyday life. So because it's one of those things that unless you're a designer, you don't pay attention to it, right? Because that's what it was designed to do. But literally everything that we use is designed, right? If we didn't have graphic design, you wouldn't know the difference between a bottle of water and a bottle of rubbing alcohol. They are both clear liquids. Without design, you wouldn't have known, now you know that a rubbing alcohol bottle is a thicker plastic. It's very cylindrical and straight, whereas a bottle of water is a thinner plastic. It usually has a kind of a hue. There's usually a label on there with water. It's usually blue, and it says water clearly, whereas rubbing alcohol, it's usually red and green, and it clearly says rubbing alcohol. All of those things are design elements, you know what I mean? And in the world that we live in, where, we have so many products and so many different things. I'm talking about signage, I'm talking about branding, I'm talking about the newspapers that you read every day for news, even the videos that you watch, even this layout that you're watching here that has names and a background, etc. All of those things are design. And it's important, but even to answer your question in the sense of country and branding as a country, I believe that Trinidad and Tobago needs a branding overdue. As someone that works in design and does branding daily, we have an identity issue, so we don't know who we are. And part of the design process is figuring that out, because design is visual communication. Graphic design is visual communication. And at the core of what we do is problem solve. And I really and truly believe that design can solve a lot of the issues that we currently face in Trinidad and Tobago.
That's a tremendous provocative thought.
Yeah.
Design is solving some of our problems.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of design in terms of graphic, but you just said that design can influence your identity. Do you want to share a little more about that?
Sure, no problem. So to help explain it better, let me talk about what I do. So I am a graphic designer. I've been doing so for 9 years now. And what I primarily do is branding. And when I say branding, what I mean is, what does your business, your company, your thing, whatever it is, look like? And also, what does it sound like? And how do people feel when they interact with it? So when people hear branding, they usually just think, oh, well, I just do logos. But it's a little bit more than that, because you can have a really nice logo, but then when you interact with your customer, you're rude, or you're saying the wrong things. And that's a part of your brand. So your brand is not just the visual representation, but also all of the other additional aspects of the thing that people see and recognize, from color to typography to attitude and behavior. And how we tie that back into the country and identity. Some of the questions that we ask, well, I ask on a daily, is, how do you want people to feel when they interact with you each time? What problem do you solve? What is the unique story about who you are and why you started and why you're doing this thing that you're doing? And I feel like those questions, like if we were to sit down and ask that of Trinidad and Tobago, we might be surprised, because most of the times we don't really ask ourselves why we're doing the thing, right? We're just like, we're always in this action mode. We're always in, let's just do the thing. We're doing the thing, we're doing the thing. We have to do this, we have to do that. But most of the times, every time when I ask the question to clients, why? Why is this important? Why are you doing this thing? It's always the question that people kind of stop and are like, oh, I didn't think about that. And then they have to take a step back and really like dig deep and figure out the why. And so I feel like that's tied into identity, and I feel like that's tied into marketing and everything. As you know, it's all connected.
That's a very different way of thinking of our identity as a people.
Yeah.
But what do you see would be some of the challenges to even start that conversation?
Oh. Not to connect chat, but Warren said an interesting thing earlier about mindset. And mindset really is the thing that would need to be changed in order for there to be any kind of way forward with this. Simply, for example, I am offering some design courses, and I wanted to have some kind of accreditation or some sort of official recognition that I can give to the attendees once they're completed. So I would have reached out to the Ministry of Education and the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago. Crickets. I have yet to receive any feedback from either of these institutions, and I have called and sent emails. And I understand that the current climate we're in, it's different, you know, people aren't out on work and that kind of thing. But there is this issue of recognition of design and creative industries in general as an industry. You know, in the rest of the world, this is like $1 billion industry that's making money, and it's a profitable industry. But in the region, and more specifically in Trinidad, we don't treat it as such. And so we still have design competitions for branding a country. We still have poster design competitions for things that people have gone to school and studied years for and earned a degree to be able to do properly. And so until we change how we treat with it, then there isn't really going to be a way forward, at least in my opinion.
So one of the major challenges is, how do we put someone around the industry and how people are trained for the industry? But let's just switch the conversation a little. Ayrid,
Okay.
and let me ask you, what do you see as the next trend, the next big trend in the area of design?
Oh, that's hard to predict. Usually trends start at like the end of the year, and they're usually like an annual thing, and they go based on, so design is a very broad word, right? So I am in communication design and graphic design, but then there's furniture design and fashion design and environmental design and spatial design and all of the other various types of design. But they're all connected in terms of color trends, in terms of style trends. And I legit cannot even think of what the next trend is going to be. The current trend has been more on a branding standpoint than a design style, in terms of authenticity has kind of been the trend that's been going on lately, of like, what's your story? Tell your real story, be your real self, as opposed to a couple of years ago, maybe a decade ago, where that was not okay. Like, you had to put on a facade and be something else. We're now entering that whole, okay, we're tired of being sold something, like, like, just tell us what it is, like, be real. But in terms of specific design styles, I've been seeing a lot of trends in terms of going back to like the 90s. And I think that style is kind of, because there is this overlap of thinking and stuff with this dystopian world that we're currently in with COVID-19. And I think that people are connecting that to when we were getting into the new millennia with 1999 to 2000. So I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of overlap of design style. And I think it's starting with fashion trends, where you're seeing that cycle coming back with that type of clothing being in style again. So I feel like that's going to happen with the rest of design soon. Yeah.
What would be your advice to a young person who is interested in design and want to be a graphic designer, or want to just be a designer? What would be your advice?
Make sure you love it. Don't get into it for the money. Don't get into it because you think it's like, it's better or easier than doing business or science or any of those other things. Like, it's not. Also, make sure that you're really a people person. That was one that I learned about 2 years ago, and that's 7 years into doing this as a as a designer. A huge part of design is interacting with people, right? Because we have to figure out what it is that someone wants and then communicate that to a broader audience. And the hardest part of design for me isn't actually designing. I would say I spend about 40% of my time actually sitting down in front of my computer designing. That other 60% is communicating with clients, answering questions, responding to emails, sending invoices, following up on payments, and dealing with the, how to say this politically correct.
The business side of it?
The business side of it, but also there are a bit of pitfalls in terms of being a creative in Trinidad and Tobago, because we just don't have access to a lot of things. So things that, like, when I was in university, I knew exactly where to go to get a thing. So for something as simple as a sketchbook. In college, I knew where to go to get a sketchbook. Or I could just literally order one online and get it the next day. But there were dedicated stores for that. In Trinidad, I can count the number of art stores that we have in our hands. If you go into a regular bookshop, you can't get a decent sketchbook. It's like the sketch pads that they use for school. And the reason that this is so fresh in my head is because I spent like 2 days trying to locate this for a course that I was, because I was like, I really shouldn't have to go on Amazon to order sketchbooks. Like, that's not but this is a thing that we use daily. And it might sound simple. It might sound like, oh, well, why just go use some paper and draw on it or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying that to say that sometimes, like, very simple things that we as creatives rely on and get accustomed to using, we don't have access to some of those things here because the industry doesn't exist fully here as yet. So being prepared to deal with all of that, passion comes in handy, because if you really care about it and you really enjoy it and it brings you joy, then it's easier to deal with all the pitfalls. I mean, it's going to be annoying regardless, but you know, once you have that drive of this is what I want to do, then chances are you won't give up as easily.
Thank you very much, Ayrid. And what would be your parting comments to our viewers?
I would say hug a graphic designer. when it's permitted after the pandemic. No, I would say just stay curious, keep talking, keep looking at things, observe trends, observe your surroundings, and see how design is in your life. Observe things a little bit more, and be open to whatever that may come your way. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but really and truly, that's what I believe.
Thank you very much, Ayrid Chandler. On that note, be open, be curious, be observant. Demming Chronicles, like and share our editions. Reach out to us, send us a comment, ask us a question. Demming Chronicles. Until next time, be safe.